Childhood is, perhaps, the last sacred refuge of the human soul. It is the enchanted garden where dreams bloom without fear, without filters, without limits. It is the time when life still dances freely, dressed in fantasy and lulled by the soft melody of hope. There, in the heart of first experiences, live castles made of pillows, imaginary friends who save the world, and a future that, even if distant, is drawn in bright, naive, and captivating colors. How many times have you stopped to listen to the child you once were? How often have you tried to remember the dreams that filled your nights and the fears that hid under your bed? Childhood is not just a time, it is a dwelling, a temple where affections take shape, where the first emotional bonds are built, and where our perception of the world begins to take form. It is there that the greatest dreams are molded, often in silence, behind attentive gazes, spontaneous gestures, carefree laughter, and timid tears. But it's also there that the first fears are born. Fear of abandonment, fear of not being enough, fear of being invisible. These small traumas, often imperceptible to adult eyes, leave deep marks. Every rejection, every absence, every unspoken word or harsh phrase begins to shape the invisible architecture of a child's psyche. And that is why, even as we grow up, we carry childhood with us. It doesn't stay behind like a closed chapter. On the contrary, it walks beside us, silent, influential, present. Very often, the sad, frustrated, and dreamless adult of today is the reflection of the wounded child of yesterday, forgotten in some dark corner of the soul. At some point in life, we are invited to walk through the labyrinths of our own mind, with care, with reverence, and above all, with deep listening. Childhood, as many thinkers of the human soul have affirmed, is the most decisive phase of our emotional development. It is where the first records of pain are written, the first mechanisms we create to endure the unbearable, the first ways we try to protect ourselves from things we cannot yet name, but already feel deeply. Some have brought to light the importance of a good enough environment in raising a child, a space that, even without perfection, offers emotional safety to exist, to experiment, to fail, and still feel worthy of love. When that environment fails, through neglect, violence, absence, or suffocating demands, the child learns, in silence, that dreaming can be dangerous, that desiring is almost always an invitation to frustration, that hoping is often a shortcut to disappointment. And so, without realizing it, we begin to stack bricks around the heart. One by one, we build walls, not out of coldness, not out of malice, but out of survival, because deep down, we are still that same child who once drew futures in the clouds, who ran freely on the inside, full of hope, but who, faced with losses, absences, and prolonged silences, chose to retreat in order to stay alive. It is in this silent retreat that dreams, little by little, begin to fade. Or rather, they fall asleep. The process of growing up is, in fact, painful. At many moments, we feel betrayed by time. How is it possible that the world, once so full of possibilities, has become this dry, bureaucratic, competitive, impersonal place? Perhaps the greatest violence of adulthood isn't the bills to pay, the responsibilities to carry, or the weight of routine. Perhaps it is forgetfulness. We forget that we were once whole, that we once danced in the rain without fear of getting wet, that we believed in happy endings, in good people, in possible miracles. We forget the promise we made to ourselves, when I grow up, I'm going to be happy. And then we find ourselves adults, but not whole, grown, but not complete, full of scars, of frustrated expectations, of broken bonds, and with that, the flame of hope that once shone in our childlike eyes begins to die out. The eyes dry up, the heart closes, the smile becomes formal, spontaneity gets lost, and often, the mirror reflects a face we no longer recognize. And so the question echoes, who or what stole our dreams? There is no single answer. The theft of dreams does not happen all at once, but in installments, in everyday episodes, seemingly trivial. Sometimes it's the critical voice of a teacher who ridicules our imagination. Other times, it's the absence of a father who never returned. It's the love that hurt. It's the constant comparison to siblings, cousins, classmates. It's the unnamed trauma, the unvalidated pain, the unacknowledged loneliness. Society also carries part of the blame. We live in a world that values productivity over sensitivity, results over process, status over essence. To dream, in this context, is a subversive act. It is swimming against the current. It is challenging a system that prefers conformed and exhausted people over inspired and whole ones. But the greatest dream thieves often live within us. They are the internalized voices that tell us we're not good enough, that we don't deserve to be happy, that it's too late to change. They are the traumas that became narratives, the wounds that turned into beliefs, the disappointments that shaped our limits. And in this tangle of pain and defenses, we begin to lose ourselves, lose who we were, lose who we once dreamed of becoming. There is a silent pain that few can name. It doesn't scream like the loss of a loved one, nor does it show up in visible wounds, but it's there, hidden in the wrinkles of the soul, whispering through sleepless nights. The pain of who we didn't become, the dream that never came true, the child left behind carrying promises that time didn't keep. We carry within us the grief for lives we never lived. How many times, in the middle of a grey routine, have we felt an emptiness we couldn't explain? How many times, in the face of apparent success, have we tasted a bitter flavour in our mouths? Maybe because deep down, we know that something essential slipped away, that somewhere along the path, we left behind that luminous version of ourselves who believed in the impossible. The grief for those unlived dreams is real, and it needs to be acknowledged, because as long as we deny that pain, it will keep sabotaging us, turning us into cynical, disheartened, apathetic beings. What is not processed returns as absence, becomes a block, a weariness, a fear of the future. Often, the exhaustion we feel in life isn't physical, it's existential. It's the exhaustion of carrying a mutilated version of ourselves, of silencing the inner scream that begs to live more intensely, more truthfully. But here's an important detail. Dreams don't die completely. They only hide. They camouflage themselves in our gestures, in our longings, in the sparkle in our eyes when we talk about certain things. They resist. Hope is stubborn. The desire to be whole, to be true, to belong. That desire survives even in the darkest moments. At some point in the journey, we must choose. Will we keep merely surviving, or will we finally start to live? To live takes courage. It demands that we face old wounds. It requires us to look inward, with honesty, with generosity, with humility. Because before we can rekindle hope, we must clear the heart. We must make space. We must let go of the versions of ourselves shaped by pain, by lack, by frustration. Yes, It is necessary to grieve for what never was, but it is also necessary to make room for what still can be. The human heart has an extraordinary capacity to be reborn. Even after years of being closed, it can open again, not with the same naivety of childhood, but with a loving clarity, not with the innocent hope of someone who's never been hurt, but with the mature hope of someone who has chosen not to give up. This reunion with oneself inevitably passes through a deep listening of our own story. We need to revisit our childhood, not as eternal victims, but as loving detectives, genuinely seeking to understand where and when we stopped believing in ourselves. Where did the light in our eyes fade? Who taught us that dreaming was dangerous? When did we start accepting less than we deserved? These questions, when asked with affection, have the power to open paths. Because when we name our pain, we reclaim our power over it. And it's only when we stop running that the real healing begins. Returning to childhood, internally, is not a regression. It's a rescue. It's remembering a time when the world was new every morning, when a hug could heal any pain, when curiosity was stronger than fear. The child we once were still lives within us. They didn't disappear. Perhaps they're just cornered, hiding in a quiet corner of the heart, afraid of being ignored again. But they are there, waiting for a glance, a gesture, a recognition. Perhaps the greatest form of healing is exactly this: listening to the child we once were. That child will tell us what they love, what they miss, what they still long for. They will remind us of what is essential. They will show us that life can be simpler, more sensitive, more spontaneous. That laughing for no reason is freeing. That singing out loud changes our state of mind. That running barefoot renews the soul. And this isn't about abandoning the responsibilities of adult life, but about balancing them with the lightness we forgot to cultivate. The adult we are can learn from the child we were, and the child we were can feel safe in the arms of the adult we now have the choice to become. All true transformation passes through the confrontation of pain. It's not about romanticizing it, but about understanding it. Pain is not punishment, it's a signal. It shows us where we are disconnected from ourselves, where we need to embrace what was once denied. But pain alone does not move us forward. We also need desire. Desire to live more fully. Desire to allow ourselves to feel, to love, to make mistakes, to begin again. Because hope doesn't come out of nowhere. It's born from encounter. The meeting between past and present, between who we were and who we want to become, between the wound and the decision to keep going. And when that meeting happens, even briefly, something lights up, a quiet sparkle in the eyes, a lighter sigh, a still shy desire to dream again. It doesn't matter how much time has passed. Life is generous. It always offers another chance to those who are willing to hear its call. Hope is not a luxury. It is a vital necessity. It is the invisible force that sustains us through difficult days. The flame that remains lit even when all the winds seem determined to blow it out. And contrary to what many believe, hope is not believing that everything will work out. It's believing that, even if it doesn't, we will still find a way. It's knowing that within us, there is a center that endures, that resists, that insists. To reclaim hope in adulthood is often an act of loving resistance. It is choosing, even while wounded, to keep walking. Even when disappointed, to keep believing. Even when exhausted, to keep opening up to the new. But how do we do that when everything in us has already given up? The answer isn't simple, and maybe it never will be, because reigniting hope isn't like flipping a switch. It's a process, a journey, a slow reconstruction made of small gestures and deep silences, of encounters that awaken something in us, of words that cross us like balm, of moments when, for just a second, we feel alive again. Hope doesn't come from nothing. It feeds on affection. And that's where we rediscover one of the keys. It's impossible to reignite hope without reconnecting with affection. Affection is the glue of existence. It's what gives meaning to our memories, what stitches our pieces together. It's through affection, given or received, that we begin to rebuild trust in the world. Because the world hasn't completely betrayed us. There are still hands that hold, eyes that understand, gestures that heal. But to see them, we must open our eyes. Not the eyes of the face, the eyes of the soul. In childhood, imagination is a vital force. It's how we face fears, invent solutions, create meaning. A blanket becomes a superhero's cape. A stick becomes a sword. A cardboard box becomes a spaceship. Imagination is the power to transcend reality, to create new worlds, even in the face of limited circumstances. In adulthood, imagination is often seen as a waste of time, as a distraction, as childish. And because of that, we lose one of the greatest tools of emotional healing we possess. Without imagination, the world dries up. Reality becomes a prison. Without imagination, we cannot visualize new possibilities for our lives. We become trapped in a pre-written script, in an existence without color, without soul, without freshness. To reclaim imagination is to reclaim inner freedom. It's to return to asking, what if? What if I tried again? What if I changed paths? What if I allowed myself to feel something new? What if I started over? Imagination is the divine breath that invites us to dance with life again. No matter how many times we've stumbled, what matters is that the music still plays, even if softly, inside us. Much of adult suffering comes from the constant effort to be what others expect of us. To wear masks, to play roles, to adapt to environments and people that don't truly see us. And this continuous effort comes at an incredibly high cost, the abandonment of oneself. We live outwardly, but forget to care for what pulses within. That's why so many adults feel emotionally drained, not from lack of time, but from an excess of disconnection. The path back to oneself requires courage, but it is also profoundly liberating. Because when we start listening again to what we truly feel, want, and need, something within us begins to realign. The chaos doesn't disappear, but it gains direction. The emptiness doesn't vanish, but it stops being paralyzing. The pain doesn't evaporate, but it becomes fertile. To be authentic is not to be perfect. It is to be whole. It is to live truthfully. It is to say yes to what warms the soul and no to what sickens it. It is to look into your own eyes and even with fear choose to stay. Deep down, what we all seek is love. Not the idealized romantic love, but a love that holds, that sees, that sustains. The kind of love we may have missed in childhood, the kind we've tried to earn in every relationship in life, the love we've so often sought outside, but which only becomes healing when it's cultivated within. Learning to love oneself is one of the greatest challenges and one of the greatest achievements of maturity. To love yourself is not to convince yourself that everything is okay. It's to allow yourself to not be okay without self-rejection. It's to accept that there are wounded parts, insecure parts, fragile parts, and still look at yourself with kindness. When we learn to love ourselves honestly, we become fertile ground for dreams to be reborn, because the soil of self-affection is the only one where hope can sprout with strong roots. And in time, we begin to smile with the heart again. We start looking toward the future with a mix of wonder and courage. We start believing that life, even in all its complexity, can be good, generous, and surprising. There comes a moment in life when we need to pause and be silent. A deep silence, not of escape, but of listening. To listen to what still pulses, what still lives, what still wants to be born within us. Because there is always something that wants to be born, even when everything seems dead. Life is movement, is cycle, is rebirth. I'm not talking about erasing the past. It is a part of us. I'm talking about looking at it with dignity, recognizing its pain and joy, understanding the whys, forgiving what we didn't know, how to do differently, and then, and only then, opening our arms to the new. The new does not promise ease, but it does promise transformation. Each new beginning is a cry of resistance against hopelessness. It is an act of faith in the invisible, in the unlikely, in what has yet to come into being. It is to declare to life, I am still here. With eyes a bit more tired, yes, but also wiser, with a heart that bears scars, yes, but deeper, more truthful, more available to love. And the most beautiful thing about new beginnings is that they do not ask for perfection. They ask for presence. They do not demand certainty. They ask for surrender. They do not want haste. They want authenticity. Do you remember the sparkle your eyes had when you were a child? That sparkle that came from simple things, like a made-up game, a leaf twirling as it fell, a long hug, a smile for no reason. The sparkle of someone who believes, who hopes, who trusts. He can come back. Not in the same way. Life has already shaped us with its storms, but he can come back more mature, more intense, wiser. A glow that comes from reconciliation with oneself, from the decision to live more truthfully, more aligned with what truly matters. This glow doesn't depend on others, nor on ideal circumstances. It is born when we decide to stop merely surviving and choose to live. When we look inside and rediscover something sacred, our desire to be whole. Life smiles back when we open ourselves to it. When we stop repeating the same stories of pain and start writing new pages. When we put aside the fear of looking ridiculous and dare to dream again. When we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, yes, but also strong in our choice to keep going. Because there is beauty in those who choose to begin again. There is poetry in those who, after everything, still choose to love. There is greatness in those who rebuild themselves with tenderness, without hardening. Life smiles again when we begin to see existence as a place of reunion, not condemnation. When we understand that losses also make room for the new, that the end of a dream can be the beginning of a deeper truth, that the ground breaking beneath our feet can be the opening to another territory, more fertile, wider, more ours. Life does smile, but it waits for us to smile at it first. This text is an invitation for you to listen to your inner child, to take its hand, to cross the present with more tenderness, more courage, more truth. It will remind you of the things that make you come alive. It will guide you back to your essence. It will offer you the eyes of hope. You can be reborn. No matter where you are now, no matter how much pain you have lived through, there is always a thread of light waiting for your decision to start walking again. And when that decision is made, even if quietly, even if discreetly, everything around you will begin to rearrange, as if life has been just waiting for that yes to show you new paths, new encounters, new possibilities. Remember, dreams are not lost. They are only waiting to be remembered. Hope has not died. It just needs space to bloom. You're not too broken. You're in process. And life, with its silent wisdom, will always offer you another chance to be whole. Childhood, with all its dreams, fears, and affections, is not just a place in the past. It is a map, a living memory, a sacred territory within us. It is there that our deepest truths, our most genuine desires, our oldest pains, and our purest source of life reside. As we grow up, we often lose ourselves, but we can always find ourselves again. And that reunion is not a return to the past. It is an embrace between who we were and who we choose to be now. It is the moment when the eyes begin to shine again, not because everything is solved, but because something inside us has reorganized. The heart can, yes, open again. Dreams can, yes, take new shape. Life can, yes, smile back at us. But it needs our consent, our movement, our courage to exist fully. So look inside with kindness.